Attack of the Giant Robot Chickens by Alex McCall. Chapter 1. My big brother's hobby was the end of the world. I don't know why, but he was fascinated by it. He'd talk about it all the time, all the different ways that civilization as we know it could come crumbling down. I had to listen to his plans to escape from tsunamis, meteorites, floods, aliens, and his favourite, zombies. He would never shut up about zombies. The walls of his room were covered with maps, and he had drawn all sorts of lines and arrows on them. He was ready for anything. I never got it. I mean, he was a normal 16-year-old. He hung out with his friends. He got good marks at school. He even had a girlfriend, but I think she was confused about his hobby. I mean, he wasn't even that geeky. Why would he have such a weird obsession? I asked him about it once. He just shrugged. I like to be prepared, he said. For what, I asked. Zombies? Aliens? That's never going to happen. He laughed at that. I can still see him standing above me, the light shining off his glasses and his blonde hair. I guess you're right. So why do you do it? He sat down to tie up the laces of his boot, bringing himself down to my level. I guess I just like the way it makes me feel, safe, like I'm prepared for anything, you know. I thought about that for a moment. That's kind of weird, I told him. He laughed again. He was always laughing. He never took anything seriously, really. Yeah, but everyone's a bit weird. He stood up again, kicking his feet a few times to make sure that his boots stayed on. Come on, Mr. Brother. Time to go to the movies. Then he ruffled my hair and we'd left. That had been 8 months ago. I hadn't seen him since. I shook myself out of my memories and looked around. Sam and Mike were standing above me on the stairs that led up to the central floor of the library. They were slouched against the wall, trying to show how unbothered they were by everything. But I could see how tense they were, so I decided to lighten the atmosphere with a joke. Hey guys, have you heard this one before? They both turned and looked at me, not impressed. I wasn't surprised. No one around here had a sense of humour. So there was this library, a bit like this one, only with a librarian, and one day a chicken walked in. Shut up, Jessie, said Sam. He was the leader on this expedition because he was the oldest. He was also a lot taller than me, though just about everyone was. That didn't mean I had to listen to what they had to say, though. So the chicken walks up to the counter and says to the librarian, "Book, book." Sam tried to ignore me and said to Mike, "Why do you think they haven't turned up yet?" "Dunno," said Mike. I'm not sure why Sam bothered asking. Dunno was one of the only things that Mike had ever said. Rumour was it that it was his first word. So the librarian gave the chicken a book and it walked out the door. The next day it came back and the same thing happened. It walked up to the librarian and said, "Book, book." The librarian gave it another book and it walked out the door. Sam continued to talk over me. I mean, we've got the food they were asking for. They should be here. I didn't give up. This kept happening day after day, and eventually the librarian begins to wonder where all his books are going. So the next day, as usual, the chicken comes in, goes up to the counter and says, "Book, book." The librarian gives it a book and turns around and walks out the door, but this time the librarian follows the chicken. Sam gritted his teeth. Seriously, Jessie, shut up. He follows the bird and it goes out of the library and down the road. Then it goes down a farm track, still clutching the book under one wing. It reaches the farm and struts over to the pond. In the middle of the pond is a frog, and scattered around it are all the books that the chicken has been taken out of the library. The chicken goes up to the frog, and it puts his presence on a lily pad, going, "Book, book." And the frog takes one look at it and shakes his head and says, "Read it, read it." I beamed up at the other two. They failed to burst into laughter. They didn't even chuckle. They just glared at me. I swear the end of the world does something awful to people's sense of humour. I took a quick look around, then got to my feet. The sunlight had moved up the wall since we'd come in. "We'd better go now, guys." Sam looked at me in disgust. "They aren't here yet." "We'll wait until they turn up." I shook my head. "They aren't coming, trust me." "Why should I?" "Because I've been sent out more times than you two put together." It was true. I reckon our leader had something against me. The library gang rely on the food too much to miss it. If they're hiding, then that means a catcher's in the area. That got their attention. It didn't matter how tough any kid pretended to be, none of us wanted to be caught. Are you sure? Sam asked. Try this, I said. Put a flat hand on the stairs, and the other two glanced at each other and copied me. After a moment, I could feel a faint tremor shake the building. By the looks on their faces, they'd felt it too. We have to get out of here, Sam hissed. Come on, Mike. Jesse, grab the food. The two older boys pushed past me. I looked at the white plastic bag sitting on the stairs, then followed them. The Aberdeen outside wasn't in ruins like you'd expect a city to be after the world had ended. The granite buildings had managed to endure for centuries. 8 months without being looked after hadn't had much effect. The grass in the small island across the street had grown long, and leaves were still everywhere, but that was the only noticeable difference. That and the silence. This used to be a busy part of the city, but now there was no one. It was like the set of a TV show waiting for the actors. If I was lucky, I'd be able to get away before the drama started. Sam and Mike had already run to the left, and I walked after them, going slower, taking my time. The ground shook again, more noticeably. It was getting closer. By the side of the theatre was a stone staircase that curled between the buildings on either side and led down to a street. I walked briskly towards it, not pausing to look around. If I hesitated for even a second, I might have been captured. And on the stairs I would be safe. It couldn't follow me down there. I kept thinking about my brother as I walked. It was something I found myself doing every time I was in danger. Sometimes I could almost feel him there with me, keeping me safe like he used to. I could imagine him doing much better than me, always being prepared. But he hadn't been prepared for this. Then again, who could prepare for this uprising? Who could have expected it? I made it to the stairs and my heart rate decreased slightly. I took a deep breath and began walking down. The stairs were old, worn stone and still slippery from the rain of the night before. I walked carefully, not wanting to risk a fall. The thing following me wouldn't be able to get me, but there were others who could. I don't know what things were like elsewhere, but in Aberdeen we quickly fell. Mankind didn't have much of a chance. After all, we were outnumbered 6-1. The ground shook again just as I reached the bottom of the stairs. I looked back, shrinking close to the ground and then freezing, trying not to be seen. There was a shadow. Then the bulk of the thing itself strutted across the passageway behind me, blocking out the light. Just a large, indistinct shape. Mike and Sam were waiting for me at the bottom. I felt touched for a moment before realising that they couldn't have gone any further without being seen. I sighed. This way, guys. I led them round the back of His Majesty's Theatre, climbing a fence and crawling through some overgrown bushes as I did. Then I motioned them to stop and slowly leaned around the corner of the building. And there it was, crossing the bridge, heading towards the art gallery in the centre of town, as if having a leisurely weekend stroll. One of the things that had been hunting us for 2/3 of the year, a giant mechanical chicken. I just stared at it for a moment and then shook my head. No, my brother would never have seen this coming.